The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. You can win up to 325 times your entry with their new Pick 8. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $200 in bonus cash. Nordic Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best data-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamepodcast.com/rhythm, sportsgamepodcast.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently late Wednesday night, roughly 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on June 5th. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod, doing something a bit different because we have been covering the men's side basically exclusively throughout the entire event. I know we did an outrights episode for the women's tournament, but now it is time to get back into covering the women's event as it is semifinal time in the French Open. So the men's semifinals are taking place on Friday. The women's are taking place on Thursday. So as a result, we are going to cover the women's semifinals since they are the standalone events for the tennis world, basically, tomorrow. Now, as for the actual recap of the Lock and Dog picks for the last episode, going to probably recap the Lock and Dog in this episode and the men's episode coming out tomorrow. But for the Lock and Dog, overall not great. Could have been worse, though. For the Lock, ended up pushing. We had Ruud Moneyline at -118. Kind of what I thought might happen in this matchup, with Djokovic being seriously injured with the knee. Apparently, he's going to need surgery on it, but I thought to myself, either A, he withdraws, and then we get our money back, or B, Djokovic for pride or for potential just determination and stubbornness would show up and be completely compromised, maybe retire mid-match, and we would pick up the money line if one full set was completed. Unfortunately for us and for the tennis world, Djokovic was too injured to play, so he ended up withdrawing, and as a result, Ruud did get a bye or a walkover into the semifinals. Good for us because we had Ruud plus 260 to win the quarter, but unfortunately not the way that the tennis world, including ourselves, wanted to kind of cash that. We would have rather have seen the match because I'm sure that would have been good television. Either way, though, point is, ended up pushing with the lock. For the dog, had two really bad beats combined in the dog for a parlay, so I guess the pain of each of them kind of cancels out. We had the Dimitrov and Sinner under, half a tiebreak, parlayed with Dimonauer to win a set, and that paid out a plus 138 on, I believe that was, I'm trying to remember the exact book that was on. I was on Bet Rivers, I believe. Either way, though, point is, did not get there. Both legs lost. The Sinner one was brutal. Sinner did not get broken in the entire match. Then he was serving for the match at 5-4 and got broken in the first time of the match when he was serving for the match. And then he ended up winning in a breaker. So that ended up going up in flames. Didn't matter anyway, though, because Dimonauer was up 4-0 in the second set breaker and choked it as he ended up losing the second set breaker. So, and eventually in straight sets. So, can't really call it a bad beat in general because both the legs lost, but each individual leg was pretty heartbreaking. Let's put it that way. Either way, though, ended up losing the dog. Time to get into, though, the brief recap of the extra pain that we had on the women's side for the Wednesday card because we had outrights. And unfortunately, I'll give you the good news first. The good news is that we had somebody in each quarterfinal matchup. So we had a shot to potentially, on the men's and women's side, sweep the actual quarters. For the women's, we had Jabeur, we had Vondrousova, we had Rybakina, and we had Sabalenka. So we had 4 shots to win one damn quarter, and they went 0-4. All 4 of our players lost, including Vondrousova, who was around 18-1. That didn't work out. We had Jabeur, who was 750. That didn't work out. She lost in 3 to Goff. Then you had the matches from today, which were devastating for us. You had Rybakina, who lost in 3 sets, and you had Sabalenka, who was sick and still went to 3 sets and blew a 1-0 lead. So ended up losing all of the outrights for the women's tournament in one day. Or I should say in one round. Not fun when you're one match away, and that did not work out. For the actual men's quarters, we did better. I'll mention that in the next episode. But anytime you have 4 shots to win a quarter and you lose all 4 of them, or I should say one shot to win 4 quarters, and you lose all 4 quarters. That sucks in the quarterfinals. So not a fun day on the women's tour for us. Either way, though, we'll look to get back on track here with a sweep here on Wednesday. Now, as for the actual reminders, before I forget, don't forget to check out the merch store to get some Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. We have shirts, we have sweatshirts, and mugs on the SGPN merch store, so don't forget to check that out. Also, a reminder to like, subscribe on YouTube, and a reminder to rate the podcast on Spotify or Apple. I believe we finally crossed 200 subscribers on YouTube, so thank you if you are one of them. If not, then what are you waiting for? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. But either way, have seen a lot of traction, a lot of comments, and don't forget to leave one either in the live stream or after when you watch the show, so don't forget to do so. A point is, though, do like the engagement. Hopefully that continues, not just for the Grand Slam events, but also for the other events for the grass season coming up over the next week. But I also want to briefly mention that we have the NBA Finals tip-off, because it is tipping off this week, and we're giving away we have a contest going on, $100 cash and a $100 gift card to the listener who listens to the NBA Finals prop contest, to the listener who wins the NBA Finals prop contest. Head over to sportsgamepodcast.com/NBA Finals to enter. And also a reminder that there is a Stanley Cup contest going on, as the Hockey Gambling Podcast guys are running a Stanley Cup contest with a $100 cash and a $100 gift card. Go to sportsgamepodcast.com/Stanley Cup to enter. So once again, you have 2 contests. NBA Finals starts on Thursday, and the Stanley Cup Finals starts on, I believe, Saturday, but at some point during the weekend. So don't forget to sign up for those 2 contests. It is free to enter, and you can still win $200 each for these contests. Either way, time to get into the actual recap of the quarterfinals for the Women's French Open. Starting off with the matches that took place on Tuesday. You had Goff, who ended up coming back from a set down against Jabeur. Good win there. Jabeur once again failing to win a big match. But either way, Goff ended up responding well to adversity as she fell behind and then was able to kind of just become rock solid. It seemed like she was able to outlast Jabeur in a lot of these rallies. Jabeur eventually got impatient, and that was kind of the story of the match. But Goff ended up winning in 3. Swiatek, I'm not even going to bother. Vondrousova was fun. You're kind of hoping that Swiatek lost along the way, and that did not happen. Vondrousova, though, was like 18-1, so I can't really roast her. If only she lost to Osaka. If she lost to Osaka, we might have been cooking, but unfortunately, Vondrousova showed up technically, but not really, because she lost 6-0, 6-2. So she got absolutely curb stomped. Nothing else to add there. Iga, we know, is incredible on clay. We were not going to pick her to win the quarter at an insane price. We were not going to pick her to win the event at -155. We thought she was going to, but in reality, there was no value there. So I had to go with a unique angle. Found one. Unfortunately, though, did not work out as Swiatek destroyed her, and that was another lost outright, one of the bigger ones that we had on the slate. As for the actual matches from Wednesday, Paolini pulled off the upset against Rybakina, as she won the first set, then lost the second, and I'm sure a lot of people at that point thought Rybakina was going to settle in and potentially win the third. Didn't happen. Paolini looked solid, and she eventually got the job done in 3. And then you had the weird match of the day, which was the late match between Andreeva and Sabalenka. In hindsight, my take on Andreeva might have been horrible, because I basically questioned why her odds were so low to win the quarter. And she won the quarter. I think it was at like 750. So congrats if you ended up taking Andreeva to win the quarter. Good for her. 17 years old. Ended up winning, I believe, her first ever match against a top 5 opponent. So definitely a good time to do so, as she ends up making a Grand Slam. She ends up making a Grand Slam semi. Kind of crazy, though, that she's 17 years old. I feel like that's not being talked about enough. I'm trying to remember what I was even doing when I was 17. I think I was taking AP American History, and I was studying for the ACT exam. I think that's what I was doing. Andreeva, though, is making hundreds of thousands of dollars, borderline millions of dollars, playing tennis. So probably the better career. Point is, though, 17 in a Grand Slam semi. That is pretty cool. Match was weird, though, because Sabalenka was definitely compromised, and she even skipped the post-match press conference because of illness, because she was feeling that poorly. The point is, you could tell she really was not moving that well, and yet Andreeva was struggling to actually capitalize early in the match. She was up a break early, then completely choked the first set away, as I believe she was up 5, I want to say 5-3 in the first set, I think. Let me just quickly check that. She was up 5-3 in the first set and ended up giving away the break back while serving for the set, then eventually lost the first set in a breaker. So you kind of assumed at that point Andreeva let her best chance slip away, and you thought that as a 17-year-old, she would mentally kind of check out of the match or at least be discouraged. Didn't happen, as Sabalenka ended up looking pretty decent in the second set, and then you ended up seeing Andreeva fight back. Sabalenka was actually up a break in the second set. She was up 3-2. Then you ended up seeing Andreeva get the immediate break back. So you thought maybe once again at 7-6, 3-2 against a 17-year-old that Sabalenka would coast from there. Didn't happen. And you ended up seeing Andreeva get the break to win the set, 6-4. That was actually the third set. Apologies there. For the second set, that one, she was up a break too. So Sabalenka was up 7-6, 1-0 with a break. Then the same thing happened in the second set where Andreeva got the immediate break back. Then the opposite happened where Andreeva went up 4-2, then gave up the immediate break back, and then broke to win the set. So it was a pretty topsy-turvy set. Either way, though, point is Sabalenka was up a break in both the second and the third set and choked away both leads. So good for Andreeva, 17, getting the job done. You also have to wonder, though, with Sabalenka being well below 100%, probably at like 40%, based on the lack of movement, am I supposed to be that impressed by the overall performance? Of course, the overall nerves and the, I'd say, poise is definitely there. I think we all know, though, if Sabalenka was healthy, she probably would have smacked Andreeva, just being honest. It seemed like she was very compromised out there, and she still gave Andreeva a serious run for her money. I'll mention why that's interesting for the actual odds for the semis in a second. I'll put it this way. I'm a bit surprised Andreeva's that big of a favorite in the semis. I'll mention that in a second. Point is, though, good win. She was pretty fortunate that Sabalenka was well below her usual 100%, but a win's a win, counts the same, and I'm sure the money and the check is going to clear the same when Andreeva goes to the bank. Either way, though, point is two very fun matchups on Wednesday, two pretty poor matchups on Tuesday, and hopefully we get two competitive matches here on Thursday. Either way, though, before we get into any of the actual previews for those semifinal matches, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, because Underdog Fantasy has a brand new Pick 8, which is live for the NBA Finals. Create entries of up to 8 picks, and Underdog will automatically double flex entries, so you can miss up to 2 picks and still win your entry. With more picks to make and extra ways to win, the excitement is higher than ever. The best part, you go up to 325 times your original amount. You can now use specials and boosts on all flexed entries, and you also can, a reminder, get a good deal with SGPN, because if you sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $200 in bonus cash, Underdog will once again give you that type of bonus when you sign up. So don't forget to use the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the quarterfinals with the recap on the Tuesday and Wednesday matches. Now it's time to get into the actual preview for the two women's semifinal matches taking place on Thursday. Spoiler, you have one that's supposed to be close on paper and one that's supposed to be a rout. So let's get this in order. Starting off with the first match, you have the one that's supposed to be a rout. You have Swiatek playing against Goff. So it's pretty ironic, though, that the matchup with the two highest seeds, I believe Goff is now the number 2 player in the world. I think she officially jumped into the 2 spot with the win in the quarters and the Sabalenka and Rybakina losses on Wednesday. So it is pretty funny that the 1 seed is a minus 750 against the 2 seed, where the two relatively unknown players are like minus 147 and plus 127. Either way, the point is Swiatek is, by no surprise, a massive favorite as she's looking for another French Open title to add to her collection. Goff, we know, did win the U.S. Open last year, still looking for her first ever French Open title. But you're looking at Swiatek laying 6 games here, and you're getting Goff plus 6 at around minus 118. The over-under is between 18.5 and 19. For the actual team total, you can find Swiatek at 12.5. The over is plus 125. The under is minus 155. For Goff, you can find anywhere between 6.5 and 7.5 games for the team total. So just keep that in mind. For the actual set spread, you have Swiatek straight sets at minus 210. Goff to win a set is plus 170. And the over-under is set at the over being plus 240, the under being at minus 300. So you're expecting Swiatek to murder, and I feel like that's expected. Now, as for the actual head-to-head, that does not really help Goff's case because Swiatek is actually 10-1 lifetime against Goff, and she has won every meeting on clay in straight sets. So probably not a good sign for Goff. In this one, I believe they faced off in was it the French Open final last year? I'm trying to remember. Point is that it was not last year, actually. I think they faced off in the French Open either final or I'm trying to remember exactly when they faced off, but I know they faced off deep in the event a couple years ago, and Swiatek ended up winning. I think it was the French Open in like 2022, I think. But either way, point is that Swiatek has faced off against Goff multiple times in the French Open, and she has won in straight sets both times. They also faced off in Rome in 2024. That was a 6-4, 6-3 win for Swiatek, and they faced off in Rome in 2021, and Swiatek once again did win in straight sets, 7-6, 6-3. So they faced off 2 times in the French Open, and Swiatek won in straight sets. 4 times on clay in general, Swiatek did win in straight sets. So not exactly an optimistic outlook for Goff. I was right. It was the 2022 final they faced off, and Swiatek did win 6-1, 6-3. I think Swiatek's going to kill her. I just have a hard time giving Goff much hope in this one. I could be wrong. Maybe Goff has learned something, and we saw the match this year on clay be somewhat competitive. It was 6-4, 6-3. Goff, though, if you look under the hood, struggled a lot more with the serve than Swiatek did. And I do think that you're looking at Goff being outmatched here. She went to 3 sets against Jabeur. Jabor's fine on clay. I think we all know Jabeur is being a better player on grass if you had to pick her favorite surface. But she went to 3 in that one, was kind of coasting in every other match besides that. But you're looking at Swiatek's last couple of matches, with the exception of the Osaka Marathon. She has won every single match in straight sets. She's lost less than 7 games in each of those other 4 matches. And she also won Rome right before this, with every match being in straight sets. So Swiatek has been on the warpath, and I do think that Goff is on the train tracks. So I'm going to go with Swiatek to win comfortably. The issue is trying to find value because she's minus 210 to win in straight sets, and I'm not going to give that out. So I have to find ways to creatively go with value. I'm not going to lay the 6 games. I think she's probably going to cover it, but I can't lay that. I don't mind the under 19 potentially, but you're looking at what could be the Rome score line of 6-4, 6-3, and you end up pushing. So I think I prefer the team total here. I don't mind the Swiatek under the 12.5 at minus 155. It is definitely juicy, but you're looking at the last couple of matches between them in the head-to-head, and Swiatek has really never needed more than 6 games per set. She ended up going to a 7-5 in the WTA finals last year. That was on hard court, though. But in the last 3 clay meetings, Swiatek has not dropped more than 4 games in a single set. So she has covered this line in all 4 head-to-head meetings on clay, covered this in both meetings in the French Open between them. I think that the team total under 12.5 for Swiatek, expecting a pretty standard like 6-3, 6-3 match is a pretty safe way to go about it. I don't mind the Goff team total under as well. Point is, though, I see a pretty lopsided matchup. I am going to go with the multiple-time champion to once again dominate. Just to show you how crazy it's been for Swiatek, by the way, over the last couple of rounds. What if I told you that 3 of Swiatek's last 4 sets, a reminder, the round of 16 and the quarterfinals, pretty deep into the event, 3 of the last 4 sets have ended 6-0. 6-0 in 3 out of the last 4 sets. She has been dominant. I got to go with Iga here. No offense to Goff. I hope that she surprises some people and maybe makes a run. Would be nice to see another American win the French Open, but I just think Iga's too good on clay. So give me Iga to win comfortably. Give me the team total unders as my main leans for that one to find some value. Either way, though, point is, I expect the favorite to win pretty decisively. Moving on to the next matchup, you have the one that should be very competitive on paper, as you're looking at Andreeva taking on Paolini. 2 surprise options for the semifinal. I think most people would agree the winner of the Iga and Goff match probably wins the event, so I don't want to immediately dismiss Paolini and Andreeva, but it feels that way. You have number 1 versus number 2, and you have 2 relatively surprising options for the semifinals, 2 Cinderellas, so to speak. I know Paolini's a bit higher ranked than Andreeva is, but you get my point. Point is, I think a lot of people are looking a lot more, I'd say, forward to the Iga match based on the overall talent and the rankings. But this match should be the closer one because you're looking at what should be a close overall war. Andreeva's minus 147 on the money line. Paolini's plus 127. You're looking at the actual spread here. Andreeva is minus 2. Paolini is plus 2. The over-under for games is set at 21.5. For set wagering, the over 2.5 sets is plus 135. Andreeva in straight sets is a plus 165. Paolini to win in straight sets is plus 265. Now, they do have a recent head-to-head. They faced off in Madrid and this year, and we saw Andreeva win that one in straight sets. It was close, though. Ended up winning 7-6, 6-4. So the match was up in the air, and it just seemed like Andreeva got the clutch points to go her way. It was a borderline coin flip, though. The match seemed very close, and it just seemed like Andreeva, once again, did a bit more on the decisive points that kind of swung the match in her favor. But I do kind of question why Andreeva is this big of a favorite at around minus 150. This line feels very off to me. I think Paolini is very good, and Paolini is ranked 15th right now, and Andreeva is ranked in the 30s. So Paolini is the higher-ranked player, which is why I said before, they are two Cinderellas, but I think Paolini is the less surprising one, in my opinion. But going through the actual path of both players, Paolini's been kind of a three-set magnet recently, as she ended up going to 3 sets in each of the last 3 rounds. You're looking at Andreeva, though, and she ended up going to 3 sets against Sabalenka. The rest was pretty easy. Ended up going to straight sets in the previous 2 rounds, went to 3 against Azarenka. We know Azarenka's been around the block a few times, solid win there. But she has had less marathons than Paolini in this event. So you can argue maybe Andreeva is the favorite because, or by this big of a margin, because there is no day off for them because they played yesterday. And since Paolini's had 3 straight 3-setters, I guess the argument might be that Andreeva should be more rested or at least have fresher legs for the course of this matchup. But I think the line's nuts. I think minus 147 on a 17-year-old who really had a hard time beating a very compromised top player. I'm not taking it away from her. Like, she won the match, don't get me wrong. But I find it interesting that Sabalenka was too sick to even do the post-match press conference, and Andreeva still had a war with her. Rybakina was fully healthy, and she was in great form too, and you saw Paolini beat her in 3. I was more impressed with the Paolini win than I was with the Andreeva win in the quarters. And I kind of wonder, not if the wrong person's favor, because the head-to-head goes in favor of Andreeva, but I think this should be closer to minus 110 apiece, minus 120 maybe Andreeva. But I see a very close match, and I'm going to lean to Paolini. I think Paolini is definitely capable of pulling off the upset, and I do think that her being the higher-ranked player and being around plus 127 is just disrespectful. I think these odds are off. I think Andreeva is a player who's going to try to keep it in play. Same with Paolini. I expect a long match, a war. But in basically a coin flip match, give me the plus money. I think these odds are kind of nuts. So I think a lot of people are pricing this based on Andreeva being viewed as a future phenom in the sport. And because she's 17 and she's ahead of schedule, they think she's going to have her official, I guess, coming out party in this event. I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit. I think Paolini's really good too, and I think that she's very live to win this. The match they just played against each other did go in favor of Andreeva, but it could have gone either way, and I do think that the straight set scoreline was misleading. So because of that, Paolini, I do think, is a very underrated player. She's not as young as Andreeva, but she's also very young. She is, actually, no, she's 28, so she's not as young, but she has had a very solid run this year, especially on clay. I think that she will be able to handle the opportunity, and I think she'll be able to make the match very competitive. For value, give me Paolini to get the job done at plus 127. For the actual, I'd say, side, that's my thoughts. For the total, give me the over. I think they're going to kill each other. I think it might go 3 sets. We've seen Paolini go to 3 sets in each of the last 3 matches. That's good enough for me. Give me the over 2.5 sets at plus 135. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual preview of the semifinal matches. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. But before we continue that, do want to remind you once again, we are brought to you by Rhythm, because if you're betting on NBA player props, then you need to get Rhythm, because Rhythm gives you a menu of the best player props for every single NBA playoff game, make it easy to go through and to find the best player props to put your money on in seconds. Rhythm's predictions are backed by over 3 years of data and a team of data scientists and quants that focus on fine-tuning the algorithm to give you the best chance at winning. Rhythm also pairs the player prop graphs with the predictions, so you can feel more confident. And they also have great options for both DFS or for actual bets. Keep that in mind. From superstars to bench players, Rhythm does have the best player prop lines, all backed by data, so you don't have to constantly scroll through a sports book. They also allow you to create your own models, so you can get AI-backed money line, spread, and total picks for every playoff game. A reminder, besides NBA, they also have WNBA. So if you do want more basketball, they do have a lot of options for you, both on the men's and women's side. Claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportsgamepodcast.com/rhythm and sportsgamepodcast.com/RITHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the semifinal matches for the Women's French Open. Now it's time to get into the actual lock and dog picks for the matches. For the lock, I mentioned it before, there is a pretty wide disparity amongst the team total lines for Goff. I found a 6.5, I found a 7.5, and I found a 7. So the odds, by the way, are not that different between the three of them. So I'm going to go with the value there. Give me Goff team total under 7.5 games at -125 on Bet365. A couple reasons why I am going to go with the team total under here for Goff. First reason, Swiatek's opponents have won less than 8 games in 7 of her last 8 matches. The one exception was Osaka, obviously, who took her to 3 sets. But when Swiatek wins in straight sets, she wins comfortably, and I see that happening once again. She's won 3 of her last 4 sets with a 6-0 bagel. So there is a chance Goff maybe wins like 5 games in a set, loses 7-5, or even maybe 7-6, and then Swiatek just buries her 6-1 in the second set, and you win anyway. So I think that it's a good option based on the price. And also worth mentioning, Goff has been awful in the head-to-head. She has won less than 8 games in 9 of the last 10 head-to-head meetings. So with that being the case, I think Goff's probably going to get smacked here. I think Iga's going to be in the final once again, and I do think that finding a full extra game shopping around, I think DraftKings at 6.5 and a Bet365 at 7.5 at basically the same odds. I'm going to take that. I think it's a great deal. Give me Goff team total under 7.5 games as my lock at -125. For my dog, I am going to go to the other match, Andreeva and Paolini. I mentioned Paolini money line, but I do think this match will be a little bit too close to call that I don't want to take it solely on a coin flip. Give me the over 2.5 sets at +135. Paolini's going to 3 sets in 3 straight matches, and I do think that Andreeva is going to be a bit nervous. Both players might be. But the match they just played in Madrid did end 7-6, 6-4. Once again, if you want to dive through the actual box score, you can. Very, very competitive match. Andreeva just got a few more bounces to go her way. I do think you're going to see a bit of a marathon here. I think both players are pretty evenly matched, and I think the odds reflect that kinda. I think it should be closer, but I do think you're looking at what should be a very close match. Paolini, though, being a 3-set Magna recently helps, and we just saw Andreeva go to 3 sets against a compromised Sabalenka. I think this matchup is kind of scripted to go 3 as far as I'm concerned. I see a lot of ebbs and flows. I see a lot of ups and downs for both players who might be very nervous in the actual biggest match of their careers up to this point. So I am going to go with the over 2.5 sets in what I think will be one of the best matches of the tournament, in my opinion. I think it's going to be an absolutely phenomenal match. That could age horribly, but I do think based on how these players are playing right now, it should be a very, very close matchup that should go very long. Either way, though, once again, the picks for the women's semifinals, the lock is going to be on Goff team total under 7.5 at -125. And my dog will be on Andreeva and Paolini over 2.5 sets at +135. A reminder, back once again for Thursday, doing the men's semifinal picks. So we have a couple of good matches there. We have Sinner versus Alcaraz, must-watch TV as far as I'm concerned. And you have Ruud and Zverev in the other one. So that's also a very solid matchup. Going to preview both those in the next episode tomorrow. Until next time, though, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show. Off of a sweep with the WNBA and the MLB. So overall, in a bit of a good run. Knock on wood. Hopefully that carries over into tennis. But you know where to find me. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.